Welcome to this week's Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield on the Rural Radio Network. We waited till the end of the week to talk because, well, we've got some interesting reports that are coming out. Though numbers aren't yet available for the cattle on feed report, we know that's maybe the bright spot that's weighing in on this trade because everybody else is checked out. They've grabbed their presents and their extra Christmas cookies and they've headed out the door. We're going to talk about this quiet trade today with Brett Kooima. He joins us with Kooima Kooima Varilek out of Sioux Center, Iowa. And I think we need to start there. This week has definitely been a quiet trade, and I think folks are just ready for the holiday.
For sure. We've had several days in a row, very, very light volume. Seems like the open interest goes down, whether we have an up day or a down day. It's like everybody just, whatever, I'm getting out. But I did want to say, Susan, Merry Christmas, and to the listeners as well. So let's start off with that. I think to your point about the light volume, Dallas, one of our brokers, mentioned it to me this morning, and I think he's spot on. You know, a lot of this fund community. Remember that a lot of these fund managers are compensated based on the performance of their given funds, and so I know that there's a number of these funds that actually close out their year at the end of November to avoid this holiday trade where things are thin and unpredictable, and maybe even a medium size or larger size order impacts the market differently than it would maybe in a normal situation. So I know during the good old days. When the pits were open, this time of year was really slow because everybody just went wink, wink, nod, nod. We're all going to go away, and so let's not have this market do anything stupid. So there does seem to be some of that. But from a perspective standpoint, you're looking at a market here, Susan, that had almost a 16% break in price. And a market that seems to be assuming that the cattle are going to grow 5 pounds a day for the rest of our career because we've had no winter, right, at all. However, it took me a half an hour to drive 15 miles here this morning because that's how thick the fog was. We're supposed to have 2 to 5 inches of snow here coming out. It's funny. It feels like maybe winter is starting. If we do something that to slow down some of these gains, the average weight has been a problem. We've had record weights. I don't think that's because the producers fighting the market. I think it's because the weather has allowed this performance to be outstanding. And also you have a couple of packers that shall remain nameless that have got these guys waiting 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks sometimes to get cattle picked up. Well, is it a surprise then that these weights are a little bit bigger, with 45-degree temperatures and the cattle doing it all? So I guess you got a packer that's got a lot of margin. He wants to kill big. We're going to have a huge kill this week. I'm hearing talk of several Saturdays in a row from some of these guys because, they're greedy. They want to make money. I think that, and maybe a little bit of a more wintry type of weather, should take this weight back down to a little more reasonable number. So cash market actually has firmed up a little bit this week, which is also, I think, a little bit encouraging. And the futures are still trading at a discount to the cash market. So you can tell I'm not real negative here. We got to get around this report this afternoon, but we'll see how that goes.
Well, then I wanted to ask you about this report coming up in January. I mean, we get the report monthly on cattle on feed, but come January, when we look at those inventory numbers, can we expect to see a decrease in this cow herd, or is it going to be another wait and see 6 months?
That's a good point. You and I are nerdy enough, or at least I am, to care about those numbers. The January numbers should be interesting to twofold, right? So the cattle on feed numbers that we get in January will give us a census of steers or heifers on feed. Right now, you get this cattle on feed report this afternoon will just tell you so many percent placements, so many marketed, so many on feed. But when you get to the January cattle on feed report, every quarter they'll give us a breakdown of how many heifers versus how many steers are on feed. That should be interesting. I think it'll show again a record number of heifers on feed. In other words, that the retention cycle hasn't started. Now, the inventory report's a whole other report. Cows, heifers, calves outside of feed yards, beef, dairy. It's very, very granular report. And from what I hear and from what I see statistically, this cow slaughter remains large. We saw a calving period or a breeding period here over the summer in the Dakotas in particular, and all the way into Montana, where I'm told by guys that have been around forever that they've never had such a problem with opens. In other words, cows that didn't get bred, especially the young stuff. And I would suppose that was the heat. I don't know. The one guy blamed flies, grasshoppers. I mean, feels like the seven plagues, right? But nevertheless, with all these opens, these people can't afford to carry those animals, right? So I would expect you'll have a new record for the lowest cow herd. Like the last report said, the lowest in 60 years. I would expect we'd have another. What I'm curious about is, what are they going to show for cattle available outside of feed yards yet to be placed?
Okay.
It has to be less. Statistically, it does. So we had big placements in September and October, I think largely because we were willing to pay so much for them. Why wouldn't you sell them? And now this report should show some of that. Okay, now we moved them ahead, so now there's less to pick from. And so the placement number ought to be lower. We'll see. And that ought to be the kind of the trend moving forward into New Year too.
All right. Well, lots of great things. I know it's a holiday week. Next week, we will not have cattle call. You will be out of the office. So we were going to take a week off and then kick it off in the new year. Wishing, Brad, you and your family a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thanks. And to yours as well.
All right. As we always remind you, commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss, not suitable to all investors. And that's this week's cattle call on the Rural Radio Network.